The dust beneath Katherine Daniels' boots felt different now, heavier somehow, as if each step carried the weight of everything she was leaving behind in the fading light of a September evening in 1882. She had walked out of her father's ranch house 3 miles back without looking over her shoulder, carrying only a worn leather satchel and the clothes on her back. The Montana sky stretched endlessly above her, painted in shades of amber and crimson as the sun dipped toward the jagged horizon. Her father's voice still echoed in her mind, harsh and unforgiving, telling her she would marry Samuel Pritchard whether she loved him or not, that women did not get to choose their own paths, that she was being foolish and ungrateful. Katherine was 22 years old, and she had spent every one of those years being told what to think, what to feel, what to want. But Samuel Pritchard was a cruel man with cold eyes and a reputation for violence, and she would rather die alone on this dusty road than spend one day as his wife. The road stretched before her like a promise, leading away from the ranch lands near Virginia City toward the distant mountains. She had cousins in Telluride, Colorado, people she had not seen since childhood but who had always written kind letters. It was hundreds of miles away, but it was somewhere, and somewhere was better than the life waiting for her back in that house. She heard the horse before she saw the rider, the steady clip of hooves on the hard, packed earth. Katherine's heart quickened with fear. Her father could have sent men after her already. Samuel could be coming to drag her back. She kept walking, her spine straight, refusing to run even as her pulse hammered in her throat. "Evening, miss." The voice was low and careful, not aggressive. Katherine stopped and turned to face the rider. He sat atop a paint horse, a young man with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that touched his collar beneath a wide-brimmed hat. His eyes were a surprising shade of blue-green, like water over stones, and they held no threat that she could see. "Evening," she replied cautiously. He looked past her down the empty road, then back toward where she had come from. "It will be dark soon. You heading somewhere specific?" "That is my own business." He nodded slowly as if he had expected that answer. "Fair enough. Name is Vincent Ashford. I work the cattle drive routes between here and Wyoming, sometimes down to Colorado. I only mention it because a woman walking alone on this road after dark is likely to run into trouble. And how do I know you are not that trouble?" Katherine asked, though something in his manner suggested he was not. Vincent touched the brim of his hat. "You don't, I suppose, but I am riding past you without stopping you, which is more than some men would do. There is a way station about 8 miles ahead. If you are walking, you will not make it before full dark, and there are wolves in these parts. Mountain lions, too. I could give you a ride if you are headed that way." Katherine studied him. She had learned to read men in the past years, watching the ranch hands and her father's business associates, learning which ones could be trusted, and which ones wore their cruelty just beneath the surface. This cowboy seemed tired more than anything else, and his offer sounded genuine rather than predatory. "I am going to Colorado," she said finally. "To Telluride." Vincent let out a low whistle. "That is a long walk. I will manage." He was quiet for a moment, then dismounted in one fluid movement. He was taller than she had expected, lean and strong in the way of men who worked hard for their living. "Listen, miss, I do not know your story and I am not asking, but that is at least a month on foot through some dangerous country. The stage runs through the way station I mentioned. If you have coin for passage, you could make it in a fraction of the time." "I have some money," Katherine said. It was not much, only what she had saved from helping with the ranch books, but it might be enough for stage fare if she was careful. "Then let me get you to that station before something with teeth finds you out here. You can ride. I will walk alongside. That way you will know I am not trying anything untoward." Katherine hesitated. Every instinct told her not to trust any man, not now, not after fighting so hard to get away. But the sky was darkening rapidly, and she knew he was right about the wolves. She had heard them many nights from her bedroom window, their howls carrying across the grasslands. "All right," she said, "but I am warning you, I have a knife and I know how to use it." "Noted," Vincent said, and to her surprise he smiled. It was not a mocking smile, but something warmer. "Can you mount up, or do you need help? I can manage." Katherine had been riding since she was old enough to sit in a saddle. She gathered her skirts and pulled herself onto the paint horse with practiced ease. Vincent handed her the reins and began walking, leading the horse by its bridle. They moved in silence for a while, the only sounds the rhythmic footfalls and the evening wind through the grass. Katherine watched the cowboy's shoulders, the easy way he moved, comfortable in his own skin. She realized she did not know how to make conversation anymore. Years of being told to keep quiet and look pleasant had stolen that skill. "You are running from something," Vincent said eventually, not looking back at her, "or someone. I thought you said you were not asking." "I am not asking for details, just stating the obvious. Woman alone with one bag, walking toward Colorado like her life depends on it." "It is not hard to figure." Katherine's fingers tightened on the reins. "My father wanted me to marry a man I cannot stand, so I left. That takes courage, or foolishness. I am not sure which yet." Vincent glanced back at her then, and something in his expression was understanding. "Sometimes they are the same thing. But I reckon living your own life however you can is better than living someone else's life for them. You speak from experience." He turned forward again. "Maybe. My father wanted me to take over his mercantile back in Pennsylvania. Wanted me behind a counter selling flour and fabric for the rest of my days. I wanted to see the territories, work under an open sky. So I left when I was 17, came west, never looked back." "Do you regret it?" "Not for a single day." He paused. "Though I imagine it is harder for you. Men like me, we can drift where we please and nobody questions it. Women get judged for wanting the same freedom." Katherine felt something loosen in her chest, some tight knot of fear and anger. Here was someone who understood, at least partially. "Yes, that is exactly it. My whole life has been about what I should want instead of what I actually want." "And what do you actually want?" Vincent asked. The question caught her off guard. Nobody had ever asked her that before. She thought about it as the horse swayed beneath her, carrying her farther from everything she had known. "I want to wake up in the morning and decide for myself what kind of day I will have," she said slowly. "I want to work, earn my own money, make my own choices. I want to look at a man and feel something besides obligation or fear. I want to matter as more than someone's daughter or someone's wife." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "Those do not sound like unreasonable things. My father thought they were the ravings of a madwoman." "Then your father is the mad one." Despite everything, Katherine felt herself smile. It was the first time she had smiled in weeks, maybe months. The muscles in her face felt strange performing the action, as if they had forgotten how. The way station appeared as the last light faded from the sky. A squat building made of rough-hewn logs with a barn and corral attached. Lamplight glowed in the windows, warm and welcoming. Vincent led the horse to the hitching post and helped Katherine down, his hands respectful, releasing her the moment her feet touched the ground. Inside, the station was run by a weathered woman named Martha who asked no questions when Katherine inquired about the southbound stage. "Comes through day after tomorrow," Martha said, wiping down the bar. "Costs $3 to Cheyenne, another $5 from there to Denver, and probably another $8 to get you to Telluride from Denver." Katherine's heart sank. She had $12 to her name. that would cover passage but leave her with nothing when she arrived. Still, it was better than walking, and she could find work in Telluride once she got there. "I will take passage to Telluride," she said, counting out the coins carefully. Martha nodded and made note in a ledger. "You will need somewhere to stay until the stage comes. I have got a room for 50 cents a night, includes breakfast." Another dollar gone, but Katherine had no choice. She agreed, and Martha showed her to a small but clean room at the back of the station. When she returned to the main room, Vincent was still there, sitting at one of the rough tables with a plate of stew and a cup of coffee. "You get sorted?" he asked. "The stage comes in 2 days. I will wait here." He nodded. "You eaten?" Katherine's stomach chose that moment to growl audibly. She had not eaten since early morning, too anxious to take anything with her when she left. "I have not, but I need to be careful with my money." Vincent stood and went to the bar, returning a moment later with another plate of stew and a cup of coffee. He set them in front of the chair across from him. "I am buying. Sit." "I do not need charity." "It is not charity. It is supper with someone who could use the company. I have been riding alone for 3 days, and I am tired of talking to my horse. He is not much for conversation." Despite her pride, Katherine was too hungry to argue further. She sat and ate, and the stew was good, thick with meat and vegetables. They talked as they ate, carefully at first, then more easily. Vincent told her about the cattle drives, the vast herds moving like a living river across the plains, the nights sleeping under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. She found herself telling him about the ranch, about learning to manage the books when her mother died, about the brief years when she thought her father might see her as more than a bargaining chip. "You are good with numbers then?" Vincent asked. "Very good. I managed all the accounts, tracked every head of cattle, every expense. My father never bothered to learn any of it. He was too busy making deals and drinking with his associates." "That is a valuable skill. You will find work easy enough in Telluride with skills like that." "I hope so." Katherine pushed her empty plate away. "Thank you for the meal and for getting me here safely." "Where are you headed tomorrow?" she asked, then wondered if it was too forward a question. Vincent leaned back in his chair. "That is the thing. I was headed up to Wyoming to meet a cattle outfit, but they do not need me for another 2 weeks. I have got time to kill and nowhere particular to be." Their eyes met across the table, and Katherine felt something shift in the air between them, some unspoken possibility. "The thing is," Vincent continued slowly, "that stage route can be rough. Bandits sometimes, and the drivers are not always the most trustworthy men. A woman traveling alone might face difficulties." "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that I could ride along. The stage makes stops every day, and I could keep pace on horseback easy enough, just to make sure you get where you are going safely." Katherine's first instinct was to refuse. She had left to escape being controlled by men, to make her own way. Accepting his help felt like a step backward. But there was a difference, she realized, between being controlled and accepting freely offered assistance from someone who asked nothing in return. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "You do not know me. This is not your concern." Vincent was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. "When I was 19, I was working a ranch in Nebraska. There was a girl there, daughter of one of the other hands. She wanted to leave, go to California, make something of herself. Her father beat her for talking like that. One night she ran. We all heard about it the next morning. 3 days later they found her body 10 miles down the road. She had been attacked by someone, robbed and killed." His voice was steady, but his eyes were distant, seeing something Katherine could not. "I always wondered if someone had just helped her, walked beside her even for a little while, if she might have made it. I cannot change what happened to her, but I can make sure it does not happen to you." Katherine felt tears prick at her eyes, unexpected and hot. "I am sorry about your friend." "So am I." Vincent looked at her directly then. "I am not trying to control your journey or make you feel obligated. If you want me to leave you alone, I will. But if you will accept the company, I would like to see you safely to Telluride. After that, I will head to Wyoming and you will never see me again if that is what you want." The strange thing was, Katherine realized she did not want that. In the few hours she had known Vincent Ashford, she had felt more seen and heard than she had in years of living in her father's house. He spoke to her like she was a person with thoughts worth hearing, like her dreams mattered. "I would appreciate the company," she said quietly. "Thank you." His smile was like sunrise, slow and warm. "Then it is settled. We will get you to Colorado." The next 2 days at the way station passed in an odd sort of peace. Katherine stayed in her room when other travelers came through, not wanting to draw attention or questions. Vincent kept his distance in a way that made her feel protected rather than watched. He slept in the barn with the horses, appearing for meals and spending his days maintaining his tack and checking his supplies for the journey ahead. On the second evening, Katherine found him in the barn, working oil into his saddle leather by lamplight. She stood in the doorway watching him work, the careful, methodical movements of his hands, the concentration on his face. "Can I ask you something?" she said. He looked up, surprised but pleased. "Of course." "You ever get lonely, drifting from place to place with no roots anywhere?" Vincent considered the question. "Sometimes, but I figure there is a difference between being alone and being lonely. I have been in rooms full of people and felt lonely because none of them really knew me. And I have been alone on the range for weeks and felt fine because I knew who I was." "Does that make sense?" "It does, actually." Katherine stepped into the barn, the smell of hay and horses familiar and comforting. "I was lonely in my father's house even though I was surrounded by people every day. I think I have been lonely most of my life. And now," she met his eyes, "now I feel like I am waking up from a long sleep. Everything is strange and frightening, but at least it is real." Vincent set down the saddle and stood, moving closer but stopping a respectful distance away. "Katherine, I know I said I would help you get to Telluride and then disappear, but I need to be honest about something. I find myself not wanting to disappear. I find myself wanting to know where you end up, what kind of life you build, what makes you happy. Is that all right? Or am I overstepping?" Her heart was beating fast, a fluttering bird in her chest. "I want that too," she admitted. "It frightens me because I swore I would not let myself depend on anyone, but I want it. You would not be depending on me. We would be two people choosing to walk the same road for a while." "That is different." "Is it? I think so. Depending on someone means you need them to survive. Choosing to be with someone means you want them in your life. You could make it to Telluride without me, Katherine. You are strong enough, but maybe you do not have to. Maybe it is all right to let someone help carry the weight sometimes." She wanted to touch him, to close the distance between them, but years of being told to guard herself held her back. Instead, she said, "Tell me more about the places you have seen. Tell me what the world is like beyond these grasslands." So he did. They sat in the hay and Vincent told her about the Badlands of Dakota, about mountains so tall their peaks disappeared into clouds, about rivers so wide you could not see the other side. He told her about a dawn in the Rockies when the sky turned purple and gold, and he felt like he was the only person in the world. He told her about nights around campfires with other drovers, about wild horses running free across the plains, about storms that split the sky with lightning. And Katherine listened and let herself imagine a life where she could see all those things, where the world was bigger than one ranch and one town and one angry father's demands. She let herself imagine Vincent showing her those places, walking beside her through all of it. When the stage arrived the next morning, Katherine climbed aboard with her small bag and Vincent mounted his paint horse. The driver, a grizzled man with tobacco-stained whiskers, looked skeptical. "You her husband, just riding escort," Vincent said evenly. "Making sure she gets where she is going, suit yourself. We make stops every 10 to 12 miles to change horses. Keep up or get left behind." The journey south was hard. The stage rattled and jolted over rough roads, and Katherine was crammed inside with 3 other passengers: a mining engineer headed to Denver, a merchant woman, and a young soldier returning to his post. The merchant woman, whose name was Agnes, took one look at Katherine's situation and seemed to understand something unspoken. She made sure Katherine got a seat by the window and shared her canteen when they stopped. True to his word, Vincent kept pace with the stage, riding alongside or ranging ahead to scout the road. At each stop, he helped Katherine down, made sure she had water and food, then remounted without fanfare when it was time to go again. They did not have much time to talk during those brief pauses, but Katherine found herself watching for him constantly, reassured by his presence. 3 days into the journey, trouble found them in the form of 4 men on horseback blocking the road. The stage driver pulled up hard and Katherine's heart plummeted. "Stage robbery," Agnes whispered, her face pale. The engineer cursed under his breath. The young soldier reached for his sidearm, but the driver hissed at him to stop. "They will kill us all if you try that, boy. Let them take what they want and we will live to see another day." But Vincent had been riding ahead and now he appeared from a stand of cottonwoods, his rifle across his saddle. Katherine could not hear what he said to the would-be robbers, but his voice was calm and steady. The bandits turned their horses toward him, hands moving toward their weapons. For a terrible moment, Katherine thought she was about to watch him die. Then Vincent did something unexpected. He raised the rifle, fired a shot into the air, and his horse reared dramatically. The shot echoed across the plains like thunder, and suddenly there were answering shots from 3 different directions, other rifles firing into the sky. The bandits looked around wildly, clearly believing they were surrounded by multiple gunmen. In reality, Katherine realized, it was just echoes and well-timed shooting from Vincent, but the illusion was enough. The 4 men wheeled their horses and fled at a gallop, disappearing into the scrubland. Vincent trotted back to the stage, his rifle resting casually on his shoulder. "Everyone all right?" The driver was staring at him with new respect. "That was some fancy shooting, Cowboy. How many men you got in those trees?" "Just me and good acoustics," Vincent said. "But they do not know that, and I would suggest we get moving before they figure it out." The driver did not need to be told twice. He whipped the horses into motion and they lurched forward, leaving the ambush site behind. Agnes looked at Katherine with raised eyebrows. "That man is either very brave or very foolish." "Maybe both," Katherine said, but she was smiling. That night, they stopped at a larger way station, one with actual rooms and a dining hall. Vincent came in after seeing to his horse, and the other passengers wanted to buy him drinks and hear the story of the bluff he had pulled. He endured it with good humor but extracted himself as soon as he could, joining Katherine at a quiet table in the corner. "You did not have to do that," she said. "You could have been killed. They were not going to leave peacefully and someone would have gotten hurt. This way worked out better for everyone. You do this sort of thing often, bluffing your way through dangerous situations." Vincent grinned. "Only when I have a good reason. And getting you safely to Colorado is the best reason I have had in a long time." Something in the way he said it made Katherine's breath catch. They were not even a week into knowing each other, but it felt like more. It felt like something real and solid was building between them, stone by stone, conversation by conversation. "When we get to Telluride," she said slowly, "I do not know what I will find there. My cousins might not want me. I might not be able to find work. Everything could fall apart. Or everything could work out beautifully," Vincent countered. "You will not know until you get there." "Are you always this optimistic?" "Someone has to be, or what is the point of getting out of bed in the morning?" She laughed despite her fears. "I suppose you are right." They talked late into the night until the other passengers had gone to bed and the station keeper was dousing lamps. Vincent told her more about his years in the West, the close calls and the good times, the people he had met and the places he had seen. Katherine told him about her mother who had died when she was 16, about the books she had read in secret, about the dreams she had harbored of a different life. "What are you most afraid of?" Vincent asked as they finally stood to part ways for the night. Katherine thought about it. "That I will get to Telluride and realize I have just traded one cage for another. That freedom is an illusion, and I will never really have control over my own life." "And what are you most hopeful for?" "That I am wrong. That the world is bigger and kinder than I have been taught. That there are people in it worth knowing." She looked at him meaningfully. "People like you." Vincent reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was calloused from years of work, warm and solid. "You are going to be fine, Katherine Daniels. Better than fine. You are going to build something beautiful, I can feel it." "Will you be part of it?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Too vulnerable, too honest. But Vincent did not pull away. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently. "If you want me to be, yes, I would like that very much." They stood there in the dim lamplight, hands clasped, and Katherine felt the world shift again. She was still walking away from everything she had known, but now someone was walking beside her, and that made all the difference. The journey continued south and west, through Wyoming territory and into Colorado. The landscape changed as they traveled, the grasslands giving way to foothills and then mountains, peaks rising like sentinels against the sky. Katherine had never seen mountains before, not real ones, and they took her breath away. At each stop, she and Vincent found moments to talk, stealing time whenever they could. She learned that he loved the smell of rain on sagebrush, that he could play the harmonica, that he had a sister back in Pennsylvania. He wrote to, but had not seen in 5 years. He learned that she was afraid of thunderstorms, that she had once wanted to be a teacher, that her favorite time of day was early morning when the world was quiet and new. They were 10 days into the journey when they stopped in a small town called Rawlins. The stage needed repairs that would take a full day, so the passengers scattered to find accommodation. Katherine checked into a boarding house run by a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Pierce, and Vincent found lodging at the livery stable. That evening, Katherine was walking through the town, stretching her legs after so many days cramped in the stage, when she heard a familiar voice calling her name. Her blood ran cold. "Katherine, Katherine Daniels." She turned to see Samuel Pritchard riding down the main street, and her father was with him. They must have followed her, must have been tracking the stage route. Her father's face was red with fury, and Samuel's eyes held something darker, something possessive and cruel. Katherine ran. She did not think, just gathered her skirts and ran through the evening streets, her heart hammering with panic. She could hear horses behind her, hoofbeats echoing off the buildings. She ducked into an alley, then another, trying to lose them in the maze of the small town. She burst out near the livery stable and nearly collided with Vincent, who was leading his horse out for water. He caught her by the shoulders, saw the terror in her face, and his expression hardened. "Who?" he asked simply. "My father. And Samuel. They are here. They found me." Vincent did not hesitate. He pulled her into the stable, into an empty stall, and positioned himself in front of her. "Stay behind me." Samuel and her father appeared moments later, dismounting with angry, determined movements. Her father's voice boomed through the stable. "Katherine, you come out here right now. This foolishness ends today." Vincent stepped into view, blocking their path. "The lady does not want to go with you." Her father looked Vincent up and down with contempt. "And who are you to speak for my daughter?" "Some saddle tramp she picked up on the road. Katherine, get out here before I have this man arrested for kidnapping." "Nobody kidnapped anybody," Vincent said calmly. "She left of her own free will, and she is continuing on of her own free will. You need to respect that." Samuel pushed forward, his hand on his gun belt. "This does not concern you, Cowboy. She is promised to me, and I am taking her back." "She is not a piece of property," Vincent said, and there was steel in his voice now. "And she is not going anywhere she does not want to go." Katherine found her courage and stepped out from behind Vincent, though she stayed close to him. "I am not marrying you, Samuel. I do not love you, and I never will. Go home. Let me live my life." Her father's face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful girl. After everything I have done for you, all the food and shelter I provided, you throw it back in my face for this. For some drifter. You provided nothing," Katherine shot back, her own anger rising to match his. "I earned my keep 10 times over managing your books and your accounts while you drank and gambled. You treated me like an asset to be traded, not a daughter to be loved. I am done with you. I am done with all of it." Samuel moved faster than she expected, lunging forward and grabbing her arm. His grip was bruising, painful, and Katherine cried out. But before she could pull away, Vincent was there. He caught Samuel's wrist and twisted, a quick economical motion that forced the other man to release Katherine and step back. "Do not touch her," Vincent said, and his voice was quiet but deadly serious. Samuel rubbed his wrist, eyes blazing. "You are going to regret that. Maybe. But you are going to regret it more if you try again." The two men faced each other, the threat of violence hanging heavy in the air. Katherine's father seemed to realize he was not going to win this confrontation through force. He changed tactics, his voice becoming unctuous and persuasive. "Katherine, sweetheart, be reasonable. You cannot survive on your own. You have no money, no prospects, no protection beyond this cowboy who will abandon you the moment something better comes along. Come home. We can forget this ever happened. Samuel is willing to overlook your behavior to still marry you." "How generous of him," Katherine said bitterly. "The answer is no. It will always be no. You will end up destitute and alone," her father warned. "Is that really better than a comfortable life as a respected man's wife?" "Yes," Katherine said simply. 1,000 times yes. I would rather starve on my own terms than eat at Samuel's table." Her father stared at her for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted. It was not understanding or acceptance, but a cold finality. "Then you are no daughter of mine. If you walk away now, you are dead to me. You will get nothing from me, no inheritance, no help, nothing." "Is that what you want?" "Yes," Katherine said again, and this time her voice did not shake. "That is exactly what I want." For a moment her father looked almost hurt, but then his face closed off completely. "So be it. Samuel, let us go. She has made her choice, and she can live with the consequences." Samuel looked like he wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but ultimately he followed Katherine's father out of the stable. They mounted their horses and rode away without looking back, disappearing into the gathering darkness. Katherine stood frozen, unable to quite believe it was over. Vincent moved to her side, close but not touching. "Are you all right?" "I do not know," she said honestly. "I just lost my family. My father just disowned me. I should feel sad or scared, but all I feel is relieved." "Relief is all right. Sometimes the things we lose are not worth keeping. She turned to look at him, this man who had stood between her and violence, who had defended her without hesitation. You could have been hurt. Samuel could have shot you. He could have. But he did not, and you are safe. That is what matters. Why? Katherine asked, and her voice broke on the word. Why do you care so much about what happens to me? Vincent reached up slowly and brushed a strand of hair back from her face, his touch gentle. Because from the moment I saw you walking alone on that road, determined and brave and refusing to give up, I knew you were someone extraordinary. And because somewhere along this journey, I started falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but they were not sad tears. I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. It terrifies me. Me too, Vincent admitted. I have spent years avoiding attachments, keeping myself free to drift wherever the wind took me. But then you came along and suddenly I do not want to drift anymore. I want to plant roots. I want to build something lasting. Katherine stepped closer, closing the distance between them. We have only known each other 2 weeks. I know, and maybe we are both crazy. But crazy is better than living half a life, is it not? She reached up and touched his face, feeling the roughness of his unshaven jaw, the warmth of his skin. I do not want you to give up your freedom for me. I do not want to be another cage. You would not be, Vincent said softly. Loving you feels like the most free I have ever been. Like I have finally found the place I was supposed to be all along. Then he kissed her, and it was nothing like the kisses she had imagined during the lonely nights of her youth. It was not forceful or demanding, but gentle and asking, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, her arms going around his neck, and kissed him back with all the hope and fear and longing that had been building inside her for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. We should probably get you back to the boarding house. Mrs. Pierce strikes me as the type who locks the doors at 9 sharp. Katherine laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. You are probably right. He walked her back through the darkening streets, their hands clasped between them. At the door to the boarding house, he kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a question. Tomorrow we continue to Telluride, he said, and when we get there we will figure out what comes next. Together. Together, Katherine agreed, and the word felt like a vow. The final leg of the journey took them through some of the most spectacular country Katherine had ever seen. The Rocky Mountains rose around them, massive and ancient, their peaks capped with snow even in September. The air grew thinner and colder, and Katherine borrowed a heavy coat from Agnes, who had taken a definite liking to the young woman and her cowboy protector. They reached Telluride on a crisp autumn morning, the town nestled in a box canyon surrounded by mountains that seemed to touch the sky. It was a mining town, busy and rough around the edges, but beautiful in its own way. Katherine felt her stomach clench with nervousness as the stage rolled down the main street. This was it. This was the new life she had been running toward. Her cousins, the Davidsons, ran a general store on the main street. Katherine had sent them a letter before she left, but there had been no time for a response. She had no idea if they would welcome her or turn her away. Vincent helped her down from the stage for the last time, and they stood together looking at the bustling street. "Do you want me to come with you?" he asked. "Or would you rather do this alone?" "Come with me," Katherine said immediately. She needed his presence, his steadiness, to get through what came next. The general store was well kept and busy, customers browsing shelves stocked with everything from mining equipment to dress fabric. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and Katherine's mother's nose. She looked up as they entered and her eyes widened. "Katherine, "Little Katie Daniels, is that you?" "Hello, Cousin Margaret," Katherine said, relief flooding through her. "I wrote to you. I do not know if you got my letter." Margaret came around the counter, her face alight with welcome. "We got it just 3 days ago." "Oh, my dear, you are really here." "Robert," she called toward the back room. "Robert, Katie is here." A tall man emerged, older than Margaret, with a full beard going gray. Robert Davidson had been kind to Katherine at her mother's funeral, one of the few people who had seemed to see her grief. He smiled now, broad and genuine. "Katherine, welcome. We have been hoping you would come." Margaret has been beside herself with excitement. The warmth of their greeting nearly undid Katherine. She had been braced for rejection, for suspicion, for 100 different ways this could go wrong. Instead, she found acceptance and family. "This is Vincent Ashford," she said, gesturing to the cowboy standing quietly beside her. "He escorted me here from Montana, kept me safe on the journey." Robert shook Vincent's hand firmly. "Then we owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you for looking after our cousin." "It was my pleasure," Vincent said, and he met Katherine's eyes as he said it. Margaret saw the look that passed between them, and her smile grew knowing. "Well, you both must be exhausted. Come upstairs, we live above the store. We will get you settled and you can tell us everything." The apartment above the store was cozy and warm, with real furniture and curtains in the windows. Margaret bustled about making tea and setting out fresh bread and butter, while Robert pulled up chairs around the kitchen table. Katherine told them an edited version of why she had left, leaving out the worst of her father's anger and Samuel's cruelty. Vincent filled in details about the journey, making it sound more adventurous than frightening. "And what are your plans now?" Margaret asked when the story was done. "You are welcome to stay with us as long as you need, of course. We have a spare room that is just sitting empty." "I need to find work," Katherine said. "I am good with numbers and bookkeeping. I was hoping there might be opportunities here." Robert and Margaret exchanged a glance, one of those married couple communications that happened without words. "Actually," Robert said slowly, "we have been looking for help with the store. The mining boom has business booming, and Margaret and I are run ragged trying to keep up with the books and the inventory and the customers. If you are as good with numbers as you say, we could certainly use you." "Really?" Katherine's heart leaped. It was almost too good to be true. "Really," Margaret confirmed. "We would pay you a fair wage and you could stay with us. It would be good to have family close again." Katherine felt tears threaten again, overwhelming gratitude mixing with relief. "I do not know what to say. Thank you so much." "No thanks needed. You are family." Margaret turned her attention to Vincent. "And what about you, Mr. Ashford? Where are you headed next?" Vincent looked at Katherine, uncertainty in his eyes for the first time since she had met him. "I am supposed to meet a cattle outfit in Wyoming in about a week. But I have been thinking I might look for work around here instead, if there are opportunities. The ranches around Telluride are always looking for good hands," Robert said. "And the mining operations need men who know horses and can handle freight. If you are looking to stay, I could point you towards some possibilities." "I would appreciate that," Vincent said quietly. That evening, after Vincent had gone to find lodging at one of the boarding houses in town, Margaret cornered Katherine in the spare room she was helping to prepare. "He is in love with you," Margaret said bluntly. "That cowboy is absolutely in love with you." Katherine sat on the edge of the narrow bed, exhausted and overwhelmed and happier than she had been in years. "I know, and I love him too. Is that insane? We have known each other less than 3 weeks." "Your mother fell in love with your father in 2 days," Margaret said, then winced. "Though perhaps that is not the best example given how things turned out. But Katie, I see the way he looks at you, and more importantly, I see the way you look at him. That is not infatuation or desperation." That is real. He makes me feel seen, Katherine said softly. Like I matter not because of what I can do for him, but just because of who I am. Is it foolish to build a life with someone based on that? Margaret sat beside her and took her hand. Love is always a leap of faith. The question is not whether it is foolish, but whether it is worth the risk. And from where I am sitting, a man who would travel hundreds of miles to make sure you were safe, who would stand between you and danger without hesitation, who looks at you like you hung the moon. That seems worth the risk to me. Katherine squeezed her cousin's hand. I think so too. Vincent found work quickly, hired by a rancher named Tom Wilkinson who ran cattle in the high meadows outside town. The work was hard, but Vincent was used to hard work, and it paid well enough for him to rent a small cabin at the edge of town. He and Katherine fell into a rhythm over the following weeks, seeing each other whenever they could, building something steady and real between them. Katherine thrived in her work at the general store. She had a natural head for business and quickly reorganized the inventory system, streamlining orders and catching several accounting errors that had been costing the Davidsons money. Customers liked her, appreciating her quick service and fair dealing. She felt useful, valued, free in ways she had never experienced before. On Sundays, her only day off, she and Vincent would go walking in the mountains. He taught her to ride astride instead of side saddle, scandalizing some of the town ladies but making Katherine laugh with delight. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's rhythms and habits, discovering the thousands of small details that made up a life. One Sunday in late October, Vincent took her to a meadow high above the town, where aspens blazed gold in the autumn sun. They spread a blanket and shared a lunch Margaret had packed, then lay back to watch clouds drift across the deep blue sky. I have been thinking, Vincent said after a long, comfortable silence. About what? About the future, about us. He rolled onto his side to look at her. Katherine, I know we have not been together long by conventional standards. But I am 30 years old and I have seen enough of the world to know when something is right. And this, us, feels more right than anything I have ever known. Katherine's heart began to beat faster. What are you saying? Vincent reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple silver with a small blue stone. I am saying that I love you. I am saying that I want to build a life with you, here in Telluride or wherever you want to be. I am saying that I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night for the rest of my life. Katherine Daniels, will you marry me? For a moment Katherine could not breathe. Marriage, the very thing she had run from back in Montana. But this was nothing like what her father had tried to force on her. This was Vincent, who knew her and valued her and loved her for who she actually was. This was choice, real choice made freely and with full knowledge. Yes, she said, and her voice was strong and sure. Yes, I will marry you. Vincent's face lit up with pure joy. He slipped the ring on her finger and then kissed her, deep and passionate and full of promise. They held each other in the golden meadow, the mountains standing witness, and Katherine felt something settle in her chest. This was home. Not a place, but a person. This was what she had been walking toward all along. They were married in December. A small ceremony in the Telluride church with Margaret and Robert, and a handful of friends as witnesses. Katherine wore a simple dress of deep green velvet that Margaret had helped her make, and Vincent wore his best suit, brushed clean and pressed. There were no fancy decorations or elaborate celebrations, but when they spoke their vows, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever came, Katherine felt the weight and beauty of the commitment they were making. The winter that followed was hard, as mountain winters always were. Snow piled high in the streets, and the temperatures dropped well below freezing. But Katherine and Vincent's little cabin stayed warm, heated by the wood stove and by their presence together. Katherine continued working at the store, and Vincent picked up winter work breaking horses for a local breeder. They were not wealthy, not by anyone's measure, but they had enough. They had each other. In the evenings they would sit by the fire, Katherine reading aloud from books they borrowed from Margaret while Vincent worked on tack or carved small figures from wood. They talked about their plans, the life they wanted to build. Vincent spoke of maybe saving enough to buy a small ranch, just enough land to run a modest herd. Katherine dreamed of maybe opening her own bookkeeping business, helping the miners and small business owners manage their finances. Spring came slowly to the mountains, but when it finally arrived, it was glorious. The snow melted into rushing streams, wildflowers carpeted the meadows, and the world felt new again. In April, Katherine realized her monthly courses had not come. By May she was certain. She was pregnant. She told Vincent one evening after supper, nervous despite herself. They had not specifically planned for children, had not discussed it beyond vague someday plans. But when she said the words, Vincent's face transformed. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with delight, then set her down gently and dropped to his knees, pressing his ear to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "This is your father speaking. I want you to know that you are already so loved, and your mother and I cannot wait to meet you." Katherine ran her fingers through his hair, tears streaming down her face. Good tears this time. "You are happy then?" "Happy does not begin to cover it," Vincent said, looking up at her with shining eyes. "You have given me everything, Katherine. A home, a purpose, a future. And now this. I am the luckiest man alive." The pregnancy progressed through the summer and into fall. Katherine worked at the store as long as she could, until Margaret finally insisted she stay home and rest. Vincent became almost comically overprotective, treating Katherine like she might break if he looked at her wrong. She found it annoying and endearing in equal measure. Their son was born in January of 1884, during a snowstorm that howled around their cabin. The midwife made it through the drifts just in time, and after long hours of labor, Katherine held a squalling red-faced baby boy in her arms. Vincent cried when he held his son for the first time, great shuddering sobs of joy and relief and overwhelming love. They named him Henry, after Katherine's mother's father, a man she had always spoken of with love and respect. Little Henry had Vincent's dark hair and Katherine's gray eyes, and from the beginning he was curious and determined, always wanting to see everything, to touch and explore and understand. The years that followed were full of work and joy in equal measure. Vincent saved his earnings carefully, and with some help from Tom Wilkinson, he eventually bought a small parcel of land with a creek running through it and good grazing. It was not much, just 50 acres, but it was theirs. They built a house together, larger than the cabin, with real glass windows and a separate bedroom for Henry. Katherine started taking in bookkeeping work from home, balancing ledgers for miners and merchants while Henry napped. The extra income helped, and she loved the work, loved feeling her mind engaged and useful. Margaret watched Henry sometimes when Katherine needed to meet with clients, and the little boy adored his great cousin, who always had cookies and stories ready. In the evenings, after Henry was asleep, Katherine and Vincent would sit on their porch and watch the sun set behind the mountains. Sometimes they talked, making plans or sharing stories from their day. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, content in each other's presence. "Do you ever regret it?" Vincent asked one evening in their 3rd year of marriage. "Walking away from your father's ranch, you could have had a much easier life." Katherine looked at him, at the home they had built, at the life they had carved out through determination and love. Not for a single moment. That would not have been a life, Vincent. It would have been an existence. This, what we have here, this is living. Even though it is hard sometimes, even though we struggle to make ends meet and the winters are brutal and the work never ends. Especially because of those things, Katherine said. Because we chose it. Because every challenge we face together. Because I wake up every morning next to a man I love who loves me back, and we are building something beautiful. How could I regret any of that? Vincent pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. I love you, Katherine Ashford. And I love you. When Henry was 4, they had a daughter, born in the spring when the meadows were full of wildflowers. They named her Clara, and she had Vincent's blue-green eyes and Katherine's stubborn determination. Henry was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help care for her, to show her things and teach her. The ranch grew slowly but steadily. Vincent built their herd through careful breeding and smart purchases, and his reputation for honest dealing brought him steady work breaking and training horses. Katherine's bookkeeping business expanded as word spread of her skills, and she took on several of the larger mining operations as clients. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. They became pillars of the Telluride community. Vincent served on the town council for a few years, helping to settle disputes and make decisions about the town's growth. Katherine organized a lending library, gathering donated books and opening her home once a week so people could come borrow them. They were respected, liked, part of the fabric of the town. Margaret and Robert grew older, eventually selling the general store and retiring, though they stayed in Telluride. They were like grandparents to Henry and Clara, always ready with advice or help or simply a listening ear. Margaret told Katherine often how proud she was, how far her young cousin had come from that frightened girl who had arrived on the stage all those years ago. Time moved on as it always does. Henry grew tall and strong, with his father's love of horses and his mother's quick mind for numbers. Clara was creative and bold, always coming up with elaborate stories and getting into harmless mischief. They grew up knowing they were loved, knowing their parents' story, understanding that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk toward an uncertain future rather than accept a certain misery. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Vincent surprised Katherine with a trip back to the meadow where he had proposed, the same golden aspen grove high above town. They left the children with Margaret and Robert and rode up on horseback, just the two of them. The aspens were gold again, blazing in the autumn sun just as they had been that day a decade before. They spread a blanket and lay together looking up at the endless sky. "You remember what you said to me that first night?" Katherine asked. "At the way station when you offered to ride along to Telluride. I said a lot of things that night. You said I was going to be fine, better than fine, that I was going to build something beautiful." Katherine rolled onto her side to look at him. "You were right." Vincent touched her face gently, the gesture as familiar now as breathing. "We built it together." "We did. And I want you to know, Vincent Ashford, that every single day I am grateful that you found me on that road, that you saw me when I felt invisible, that you walked beside me when you could have ridden past. You saved my life, but more than that, you helped me build a life worth saving." "You give me too much credit," Vincent said, but his voice was thick with emotion. "You saved yourself, Katherine. You had the courage to walk away, to choose yourself and your freedom. I just had the incredible good fortune to be there when you did." "Then we saved each other," Katherine said, "and we will keep saving each other every day for the rest of our lives." They kissed in the golden light, surrounded by mountains and aspens, and the life they had built stone by stone, day by day, choice by choice. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Henry eventually married a rancher's daughter named Sarah, a capable woman who loved the land as much as he did. They built a house on the far side of Vincent and Catherine's property, expanding the ranch and the family together. Clara showed a talent for art and eventually went to Denver to study, though she returned to Telluride every summer, unable to stay away from the mountains for long. Katherine and Vincent grew older together, their hair graying, their faces weathering like the mountains around them. But their love remained constant, deepening and evolving but never diminishing. They still sat on their porch in the evenings, still held hands like young lovers, still found reasons to laugh together every day. When grandchildren arrived, Henry and Sarah's twin boys first, then Clara's daughter born in Denver but brought to Telluride for extended visits, Katherine and Vincent embraced their new role with joy. They taught the children to ride, to respect the land, to work hard and love fiercely. They told them stories of how they had met, of the long journey from Montana, of building a life from nothing but determination and love. In the winter of 1905, when they had been married for 23 years, a letter arrived from Pennsylvania. Vincent's sister Sarah was writing to tell him their father had died. It was not unexpected. The old man had been ill for some time, but it still affected Vincent deeply. He had not seen his father since he had left home at 17, had exchanged only occasional letters over the decades. "Do you regret it?" Katherine asked as they sat by the fire that evening, Vincent staring into the flames with distant eyes. Never reconciling with him, Vincent thought about it for a long time. "I regret that he could not understand my choices. I regret that he spent so much time being disappointed in the son I was instead of being proud of the man I became. But I do not regret leaving. I do not regret choosing this life over the one he wanted for me, because this life brought me you and our children and everything that matters." Katherine rested her head on his shoulder. "I think he probably was proud, even if he could not say it. How could he not be? Look at what you have built, who you have become." "We built," Vincent corrected gently. "Always we, Katherine, never just me." They sat together in the firelight, two people who had walked away from everything they knew and found each other on the road toward something better. They had built a life filled with love and work and purpose, a life that mattered not because it was easy or glamorous, but because it was theirs. The children grew and the grandchildren grew, and Katherine and Vincent grew older. They slowed down, as all people do with age, but they never stopped moving forward. Vincent still rode out to check the cattle even in his 60s, though he let Henry handle most of the heavy work. Katherine still kept the books for the ranch and several other businesses, her mind as sharp as ever even as her body grew more frail. They celebrated their 30th anniversary surrounded by family and friends, a party that filled their house and spilled out onto the porch and yard. Henry and Sarah's boys, grown now and working the ranch themselves, gave a toast to their grandparents. Clara read a poem she had written about love and perseverance. Margaret, ancient now but still sharp-witted, told embarrassing stories from the early days when Katherine had first arrived in Telluride. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Katherine and Vincent found themselves alone on the porch again, watching the sun set in shades of rose and gold behind the familiar mountains. 30 years, Katherine said wonderingly. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like no time at all." "Best 30 years of my life," Vincent said, "and however many more we get, I intend to make the most of everyone." "You are not tired of me yet," Katherine teased. "Never. I could have 100 more years with you, and it would not be enough." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the house they could hear Clara laughing at something Henry said, could hear the children running and playing. The sounds of family, of home, of a life well lived. Katherine thought about that frightened girl walking alone on a Montana road, desperate and determined in equal measure. She thought about the cowboy who had chosen to ride beside her, who had seen her value when she could barely see it herself. She thought about every choice they had made, every challenge they had faced, every moment of joy and sorrow and ordinary life. "I would do it all again," she said softly. "Every single moment exactly the same. Would you?" Vincent turned to look at her, his blue-green eyes still as bright and warm as they had been that first day. "Without hesitation," he said. "Walking beside you has been the greatest privilege of my life." They kissed as the stars wheeled overhead, two people who had walked away from everything they knew and found each other on the road toward something better. They had built a love that lasted, a family that thrived, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.